Hey, what's up, Ed? How you doing?
I'm doing good, Patrick. How are you?
I'm doing great. I know you're a busy man, so let's jump right into it. But before we get to the Red Pill Expo, would you mind telling us a little bit about your back history and what you were about 30 years old when you wrote,
Hmm.
or my age when you wrote The Fearful Masters, followed by a couple other really nice books, and
Yeah,
now
yeah,
you're organizing conferences and speaking around the world. And
yeah.
tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it was a long journey and it's kind of boring in many ways, but I guess the common theme of the whole thing, Patrick, is that had I known in the beginning where I was going to, what I was going to encounter along the way, I would have tried a different path. Because, yeah, like everybody, we have a lot of confrontations, a lot of obstacles that we run up against. And I've noticed over the years that some people have more of a stomach for confrontation than others. And it was very tempting at many points just to say, oh, I give up. I can't do this. I can't. I'm too little, I don't know enough and so forth. But fortunately, I guess I had the crusader gene in me. I didn't know that at first because in the beginning, I started off just trying to be like everybody else, having a lot of fun and making some money and marrying the prettiest girl on campus and having a family and being successful and retiring. That was kind of my shot. But somewhere along there, about, as you say, at your age, that late 20s, I found out I had a crusader gene because I started to read some stuff and ran across some lectures, and it's a long story, but it was very disturbing to me because I was hearing things I didn't want to hear. I was hearing that I'd been fooled. I was hearing that maybe things weren't so hot after all. Maybe there were hidden agendas. And I thought, oh, come on. Everything's out in the open, isn't it? You read the newspapers, you turn on the televisions, you get the truth, right? So that's where I came from. But I gradually became aware that there were things going on that were not what we thought. Um, Fast forwarding, that's why we really launched this thing called the Red Pill Expo and the Red Pill University. Because even back then, I didn't know it because, of course, the meme wasn't out there yet about take the red pill. The sci-fi movie called The Matrix hadn't been produced, but that's what was going on. I was taking the red pill and discovering that, oh my gosh, what I thought I knew, uh, it was false. So I quit my job. I was working for a large corporation, a large insurance company. I was in underwriting and sales promotion, and we were, doing things for large companies like putting together insurance policies, group insurance policies. And I was climbing the ladder, doing very well. And I was bitten by this bug, or the crusader gene kicked in, and I quit my job because I wanted to go out and crusade and make a difference in the world. My poor wife almost had a nervous breakdown. I'm just exaggerating. She didn't, but she was very concerned. She thought I was crazy, and I did too. But I had no choice. I felt that I had to do something about it. So I did, and I started out making little documentary films, very low budget things because it was all on my money. And in those days, we did film strips. A series of still pictures, and you put them on a projector, and somebody sits there, and it turns the knob, and the picture changes, and there's a beep. Kind of crude, but that's the way we did it in those days, and that's how I started. And then somewhere along, I'll crunch this down. I decided I was going to produce a low budget documentary film on the nature of inflation. I had no idea what inflation really was caused by, but I was pretty sure that what they were saying wasn't true. They were saying that, well, it's the cause of it's caused by greedy people. Like the stores were charging too much for their food products and their clothing products, and their profits were too large. Darn capitalists, that they were the ones creating the problem. And of course, the grocery stores would, no, it's not us, it's the distributors. And the distributors said, no, it's not us, it's the guys that buy the guys that, the canneries and so forth. They get the mass quotas of the food, and they have all the profit margin. And the farmers are saying, yeah, we're getting starved at this end, and people saying the farmers are making too. Anyway, I knew that wasn't true. So that led me straight in my early research to discovery of the engine of inflation, which is the creation of money at a rate faster than the creation of goods and services. Pretty simple formula. And then I thought, well, who's doing that? And I found out it was the Federal Reserve System. And I said, well, what's that? And, it's that kind of a thing. And at every stage of the road, Patrick, I was, cutting into new areas that I really wasn't qualified to be in. And especially on this topic of the Federal Reserve, I got into real deep theory, deep practices, a lot of mechanics that were very confusing, a lot of deception in the banking industry. And I spent over 7 years of my life on the project, but at 2 times during that process, I gave up. I thought, this is too much. I just, I went to school, I studied girls, I didn't study banking or anything. And I thought, somebody else has got to do this, but I came back to it. And so the point is that I had some illness along the way that kind of stopped me for a while, but I just kept plodding away. And I guess there's a lesson to be learned is just, just follow your crusader gene if that's clicking away. Do whatever your heart tells you have to do. Don't listen to too many people giving advice. Just follow your own instincts, and you'll probably follow a zigzag pattern like I did. And if you're lucky, and I emphasize that a lot, luck plays a role. You have to work hard, but you got to have a little luck too. You have to have both. And if you're lucky and you work hard and make the right decisions, why, everything turns out just wonderful. That's the story of my life, condensed in 3 minutes.
Excellent. Not to mention there was no internet when you wrote The Creature from Jekyll Island.
No.
It's the only book of yours that I've read. But are you focused more so on economics and the corruption of the banking cartel and this whole system, and following when its demise, which should be?
No, I wouldn't say that is my total focus, because you find that same phenomenon everywhere. Yeah, everywhere you look, you find it in healthcare, you find it in communications, you find it everywhere you look. Even I'm finding out now, you find it in the power industry. Even you find it. Well, everywhere you look, the most important aspects of our lives are dominated by cartels. They seem to be like competing groups, but they actually aren't competing. They've somewhere gotten together along the way, and they've decided we're not going to compete on the big issues. Well, like the banking cartel, for instance, that most people don't realize that the Federal Reserve is in fact a banking cartel. They think it's a government agency. Well, no, it's a cartel of banks. It's a union of banks, and they got control of Congress, and they got Congress to pass their banking cartel into law. And so now, if we don't do what the banks want us to do, we go to prison. And so we think, well, therefore it must be a government agency. The Federal Reserve must be a government agency. Who else can put you in prison? And the fact is, the agreement or the law was written by the banks themselves, and they hired a lot of congressmen. They paid people off either with money or blackmail or whatever, and they got this thing passed into law. So anyway, you find that everywhere right now. We see the healthcare industry being very much cartelized in the same way. The telecommunications industry, everywhere you look. And once people understand that cartels are the reality of our day, and we don't even, how often do you hear that word used in school or in the media? They don't talk about the cartelization of our world. And without that understanding, you just don't know what the heck's going on. So anyway, that's how it is. And I have an interest in all of these areas. They all affect my life and the future of my kids and the future of all mankind. This is not just an American phenomenon. It's everywhere in the world.
And that's why you're bringing like-minded people together for events like the Red Pill Expo. Can you tell us who you have speaking? Some of your
well, I should get my list out there. We got some of the greatest teachers in the world. The first name that comes to mind is Robert Kiyosaki. I've gotten to know Robert quite well. He's perhaps one of the best known authors in the world. His book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and a whole string of books after that. But Rich Dad, Poor Dad alone, I think I can't tell you how many millions of copies it's sold around the world. It's definitely the #1 bestseller in business advisory and financial planning category in the world and throughout all history. He's legions ahead of all the other books. And he'll be speaking. And by the way, guys like this fellow, Robert, they get big bucks for speaking. I mean, hundreds, sometimes over $100,000 to make one speech, because the people come to hear him, and he's so highly respected. And Robert, this is his third time coming to us. He's never charged a dime. Yeah, he comes on his own penny, you know, and he's the first one to explain. He comes to learn. I think that's crazy, you know. He comes to
great
speak.
about these events. Yeah.
Yeah. None of our speakers get paid. They come because they want to tell the world what they've discovered. They have got the Crusader gene too. It's you can tell if somebody says, "Well, how much do you pay?" Well, I understand that, because I get honoraria too, but it's not my first crack. You know, I want to say, well, who's the audience? Who's there? I'll travel around the world to speak to a college audience anytime, no pay, just get me there. I like to talk to the young people. Anyway, I'm digressing. So Robert will be there, and he and I will be actually sharing the stage on Friday. We have a 2-hour session called a high school course on money that they don't teach in high school. And I get the first half, and I'll be talking about what they don't teach about money. And Robert will come on the second half and talk about what they don't teach about wealth. It's a different thing. And most people have no idea what you're talking about. What's the difference between money and wealth? Big difference. And that's why most of us never got any wealth in our early years, and even throughout our lives, for that matter. And anyway, that's one. Del Bigtree, for example, is the very well-known Hollywood producer of the movie Vaxxed, which was an expose of the vaccine industry. That would, it hit the news a couple of years ago. It was at one of the great film festivals, and everybody was so enthusiastic about it. Robert De Niro and the producers of the film festival, oh man, this is great, people have to see it. And then all of a sudden, I guess they got calls from the attorneys at the pharmaceutical industry, and threatened them if they showed this movie, they were going to be in court and so forth. So they all got scared and backed away, and they withdrew the film and all of that. And the producer of the film, Del Bigtree, was saying, what's going on? He did not realize that there was a cartel in the pharmaceutical industry, and that these people were very, very powerful, a lot of money, a lot of political influence. And so they actually, it turned out in the long run to be a good thing, because the controversy made people curious. Why don't they want me to see this movie? So it actually helped in the long run. But anyway, Del Bigtree it will be there, and he'll be talking about the red pill that he took. He produced the film thinking that it was a great film, a great expose, something that people ought to know about the horrors of vaccines, and how the truth about all vaccines, not just the current ones, but all of them, have been pretty well buried and hidden from public view, and so forth. And so people want to know about this, right? Well, no, some people don't want you to know about it. So that's his red pill. He'll be talking about that. And a whole list. We have about 28 different speakers, and it'll blow your mind. And now, we don't know for sure. Let's be honest. I don't know for sure that everybody who takes a red pill really got the right red pill. Maybe they took another blue pill or something like that. But we think it's you've got to take the lid off and see what people are talking about. If they seem to know what they're talking about, they've had experience, and all of these people who we'll be talking to have experience. I'm just thinking off the top of my head. I did an interview yesterday with Pam Lukasha, who's a prominent leader in the homeschool movement in the northeastern states, and her red pill about what happened to our schools. Do you really get an education in schools, or has that been cartelized too? So that's just another name comes to mind. Everywhere you look, Patrick, you find that there is illusion in our lives. And it seems like the most important aspects of our lives, the more important it is, it seems the more likely it is that some group or cartel has gotten in there and captured the public image of what is going on in that field, because it serves their interest for people to think everything is fine. Oh, They're there looking out for me. Isn't it nice that I've got all these agencies and these institutions who really care about me? When in fact, when you peel off the label, you think, oh, it's kind of rat infested down in there. So anyway, I could go on, but I know we don't have time. But if anybody is interested, as I hope all of your listeners are interested, go to the website and check out that stellar list of speakers. And the website is redpillexpo.net, redpillexpo.net.
Nice, yeah. And when you go over to the tickets area, if you use coupon code TSOA, you'll get a discount on your ticket.
Right. Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, a very important point. And as a matter of fact, let's be clear, to make sure that that works correctly with no hiccups, you should use the other website, would be redpillexpo.org. So that's probably the better one, especially if you want that discount. Yes. So that would be redpillexpo.org.
All right. We're going to be over there. We'll see you. The State of Anarchy is going to be doing a press kit for you, and it's going to be a nice, fun time. Okay. Yeah. So we'll see you soon. Thanks so much for your time, and see you at the conference.
Good, Patrick. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah.
I'll see you there. All right. Bye.
Imani, I'll just edit it. I'm an editor.
Yeah. Okay.
Imani said you want to talk about Illuciferium or a Lucifer. I noticed when I turned my Skype up, my image is a Lucifer.
Yeah. Well, Well, the image on your cap, for example, what is that? People are asking me.
This is actually this is a logo that I designed for the State of Anarchy. This is our logo. This is our brand identity. What it actually is the alpha, the omega fused together, and this triangle inside the sphere represents the Trinity. So it's the alpha, the omega, and the Trinity. And it's basically the new anarchy symbol. Oh, what is the Trinity?
Yeah, what is the Trinity?
Well, that's why I built the Luciferium. The Trinity can be explained mathematically through fractals, basically. The fractal tier system, the structure within a sphere, and the way that information moves from the epicenter of that sphere. This is all metaphysical. The way that it moves from the center to the apex and collapses in on itself and breathes and fluxes. That's how you can understand what the Trinity is mathematically. So that's what a Luciferium is. And when the information that moves from the center of that sphere moves to its apex, it does two things. It collapses in on itself, but equally expands. And that's what creates these galactic spirals and flowers of a sun ray. But everything starts from that epicentral coordinate of spirit or whatever it is. And the word God, etymologically, sort of explains creation in this expansion of spheres, basically, or like the creation of space-time. It's got a lot to do with Genesis. I've only read up to chapters 9 in Genesis. There's just so much information there. That's all. Like, I read it as a mathematician, not as some personified story of mysticism. It's mathematical, explains creation, explains toroidal flow. It explains, it introduces you to the base 10 system, 0 through 9. But at the same time, because the word God is so charged, I mean, it's the Bible, it says in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God. So before you can even move beyond that, you kind of should understand what words are and what the word God is, because it's almost saying that the word God is more important than what God is. It's telling you to focus on that. So I broke that down with fractal mathematics, and I think I just rediscovered this. It's not my creation, but the word God, when drawn from the center of a tier, like a drop, G-O-D, it creates this three-dimensional, or fourth-dimensional, I guess, because it's a three-dimensional object in fourth-dimensional space-time that doesn't really exist, and it's just imagination anyway. but it creates the tier system. The word itself does. And when you draw it two-dimensionally, it introduces you to basically like cell division, the Vesca Pisces, sacred geometry. But that's why I chose the name Illucifer, because it's more of like illuminescence or to be elusive. And it's not Lucifer. As a matter of fact, I don't know anything about Lucifer. I was hoping that would be more in the beginning of the Bible, but I mean, I just started, after I got that far, I just decided to start building this animation to get this concept out of my head. And then other things came up, and I haven't done much work with that other than I have done some animations, educational animations and schematics on Noah's Ark and what the Ark is, and how there's different but relative definitions for the word arc. Like ARK represents like this physical thing, and ARC is like an electrical current, but they're both relative to the personified stories in the Bible, as well as quantum physics and magnetism. Just really interesting stuff. Like the N represents a 90-degree angle, the A represents a 180-degree angle, and then the O itself represents a 360-degree angle. So those are the three angles, or the three arcs, the archangels or the archangles that go through this cubit, which is the sphere. It's interesting because you see in like Islam over there, they all go around that black cube. It's really interesting. It's like the 0 point is what I study, which is basically the cubit, which is what the book of Genesis measures. It uses as a unit of measure, and it gives you measurements and describes this. I wish I could show you my desktop now, but just fractaling flower of lives in infinity in a finite space, basically, and then how it unfolds into matter. And this is the real illusion, and the centeredness is the source that we all emanate from and will return to.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's interesting. So what it's all about then is sort of what I've used the word metaphysical. It definitely is that, but it's also more of a mathematical or conceptual relationship understanding of relationships is probably not the right word either. It's a different understanding of the nature of the universe than most of us have. Would you consider this to be the reason I'm asking, by the way, you can guess. I know that probably 90% of our friends are going to look at this and they're going to say, what? Hey, Griffin, what are you, a Luciferian now? You know, that'll be the first response. So I thought, well, I better find out what this is all about. So I'm curious at two levels. One is sort of a defensive mode, because I don't want people to misunderstand, and we don't want to lose our influence over good people. We're trying to build a coalition. We don't expect in any way all a uniformity of concept or beliefs or anything like that. But we do have to make sure that we know what we're dealing with. There are certain things we just couldn't, probably would break us apart and destroy us. And I would think that Luciferianism might be one of them, because most of our people would run the other way screaming, as you can imagine. So that's why I wanted to get very clear on this. And we need, I'm sure, well, I hope not, but we may have to explain it to some people that ask us. That's the reason I sent a message to Imani, said, okay, I want to be informed about this. So that's what it's all about. And I'm interested in the mathematics that you're talking about. I've studied some of that myself, but not in any way ever associated with a spiritual connection. It's more just abstract mathematical building blocks of the universe and that kind of thing. Nothing in terms of consciousness or spiritual. So do you see the consciousness and spirituality involved in these mathematical concepts? Is that
absolutely
true?
Yes, and that's where I am in the occultism aspect of Anarchadelphia, our conference, and what we do. It has nothing to do with like Satanism or Luciferianism or or any cult like practice. I mean, that word occultism, it's the same as the word God. Like I said, these are so charged. They have these connotations that
Yeah, they are.
attached to them.
They really are.
That's why I named my project, which is all about God, Illuciferium. And Illuciferium is a state of illusion. It's just like, I mean, I would say the best thing to do is to go and watch it. You know, YouTube Illuciferium. It's 21 minutes long. Took me several years to do it, from studying to animating it and narrating it, and yeah, but it's all about God and love and
what is it? Illuciferium?
No. Yeah, Illuciferium. Yes. Here,
I forgot. How do you spell that? E-L?
Illuciferium, which is inspired by, I mean, the rise of Ethereum and how that changed my life. The word serum, the word illusion, elusive, illuminescence. That's where that all comes from. And it's interesting. Ethereum is like this, etheric, economic environment. So how do you feel about cryptocurrencies? And like like you wrote in your book, I can remember this so detailed, because I could just imagine this like pristine boxcar chugging down, like in through this poor town. You know what I mean? Clearly these people are like out of place, trying to hide, going down to Jekyll Island to do this, very mischievous. Do you think that people are ahead of the game? Some cartels are already ahead of the game with Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology, and is setting us up for some sort of social crediting system to be the cartel in digital money?
That's a direct question, deserves a direct answer. On the scale of probabilities right now, my judgment tells me yes.
Me too. I think so also. It seems too, and they have all the anarchists leading the way. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, it's a very interesting time to live in. Yeah. What's happening.
Yeah, it's brilliant what they have done. I think in many ways it's parallel to how they sold the Federal Reserve System. In the beginning there was a lot of belief that the banks really didn't like the Federal Reserve, and some of them wrote papers on it and interviews and said, "Oh, the Federal Reserve got some good points to it, but it's going to be bad for America. It's going to be bad for business, And the average gum-chewing public said, "Oh, look, Maud, the bankers don't like it very much. It must be pretty good." And so that's how one of the tricks that they were using is to convince people that it was not their baby at all, that they opposed it. It was going to be bad for them. So I think I see a lot of that going on now. And I've always known that the cashless society was really their big goal. And this is the cashless society in spades. Mm-hmm. So all they have to do is control it. They've got the political power and the financial resources to control anything right now.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, everyone sort of says, well, it's peer-to-peer, and you can just use it with everybody, and you can use some other system. But if they implement it, and Bitcoin just becomes the world reserve currency, and whoever Satoshi or this group is, and they have 5 or 6% of the entire currency, not to mention however much they're trading and building up in the meantime with this crazy volatility. If they planned it, then they're definitely playing the game as they go up.
Yeah, and it can be peer-to-peer all it wants to, but it has to go through some kind of a clearinghouse to be verified and all that to get in. That's what they're building right now is the clearinghouse concept, where all of these independent peer-to-peer networks have to clear to get their little registration number to verify what product or service it is. The IMF has been working on that for over a year, building a catalog of identification numbers for every conceivable human activity and every product. The Internet of Things has got to have some kind of a serial number on everything. Yeah. And so it'll be digital, and that's what they're planning on. That's my belief. I'm not 100%, but I'm about 92% convinced of that right now.
Yeah, I don't think Bitcoin itself will be the reserved currency of the world. It might be just some digital asset like gold or something, and there'll be all these other currencies. But what's scary is that the state will create its own blockchain and its own coin, and they've got, I don't know how many people work for the state, how many people get benefits from the state, how many people are basically just going to be on that currency overnight. It's a lot of people.
A lot of people, yeah, and all of their friends and associates and family, yeah.
And weirdos talking about Bitcoin, like use Bitcoin. Meanwhile, like the state, or maybe the state won't accept it, or like there'll be a social crediting system like in China, what's going on in China. And if you interact with people who use Bitcoin wallets, you get slower.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, well, I appreciate your explanation. I really want to know as much as I can about it, and I'm embarrassed to even have to bring it up, but it's part of my job, as you can imagine. I've got to.
I'm just excited to explain it.
Well, I'm glad you took that attitude.
And the character Lucifer is like this character that I created to cast the spell of Illuciferium, and it was supposed to just be. I didn't want it really even to be associated with myself. I just wanted it to be a project that I put out there. And then I created a Steemit account for it, and then I accidentally reposted some content that basically blew my identity. So, and I just started using it as like a handle, like a screen name, basically. But yeah. I'm about to put it to rest, though. It's just the Luciferium. That's one project, and I'm on to several other now.
Yeah. Well, we have to get rid of that Luciferian connection, and now you're saying in plain English that there's no connection between the concept of Lucifer, and that has different esoteric.
Oh no, hell no. I'm very, very proud of Illuciferium, my animation. I'm definitely not a Satanist.
Yeah.
So funny. Yeah, some people commented on it. I had an interview with Omar Bam at Consensus, New York City. This was last year. We were talking about cryptocurrencies, and I just went and I wore a badge that said Illuciferium because I wasn't with a blockchain company or anything like that. So we went upstairs. I think he was under the impression it was some sort of blockchain related company. So I just started explaining it, and like he's going live. So the people who are watching his channel are subscribed because they're into cryptocurrencies and blockchain news and stuff. And all of a sudden I start talking about metaphysics and consciousness and Illuciferium, and the comments were just like Luciferian on the blockchain and all this crazy stuff. I'm like, oh, it's just funny.
Well, yeah,
the internet's a funny place,
Well, yeah, it's sort of a fast track for the real world out there. I mean, you see it right on your screen. That's the real world. You got that window to it. And okay, well, we need to. I don't hope that's not going to be a problem, but I know we're going to need to have some kind of an explanation. I hope you get deeply involved in what we're trying to do. We're trying to build a coalition, and that means we got to have a lot of different points of view. And it gets particularly gnarly when we touch on people's religious convictions, their theologies. It's something that people, and myself included, I suppose, we kind of guard it jealously, because we see that as our understanding, our window to the truth, to the universal truth. So that's very precious to us. So we guard that like we guard our family and like our inner thoughts and so forth.
That was my major turning point in my life. Specifically, I was raised pretty hardcore Roman Catholic. I was an altar boy, went to communion, dropped out of confirmation. My aunt just retired. She was a nun her whole life. My other aunt was a nun for like 15 years, like the whole life. But I became an atheist for a while, and Illuciferium is actually, studying this sacred geometry and consciousness and nature basically brought spirit back into my life, brought God back into my life.
Well, yeah, because atheism would be counter to what you just described. Yours is a different understanding of the force of creation, whereas the atheist would deny that there is a force of creation. Yeah. So, well, anyway, it's I don't think anybody in our movement, wants to get into the business of judging whose theological view is the correct one. We all make that decision for ourselves correctly, I think. But we want to make sure that some of those concepts lead to some pretty antisocial activity, anti-freedom activity. Some theological beliefs, even though we think everybody should have the right to hold them if they wish, it's their prerogative as a free human being, but sometimes they bridge over and affect our lives because their beliefs are such that they want to coerce us into following their beliefs or die, that kind of thing. Well, now we have to take an interest in it, and whether we like to or not, it's not a question of wanting to prevent somebody from believing what they want to believe, but we want to insulate ourselves from their social and political activity. That's about it.
Sure. Right.
So, well, thank you for that explanation. If you have any other references you want to send me, I'd really appreciate it. I'm interested in the fractal concept. I'm interested in the structure. I've been thinking a lot, and not like you, but I've been thinking a lot about numbers in the last few months.
Really interesting.
Yeah, I've been thinking about numbers. The other day, my wife walked in. I'm staring out the window. She said, "What are you thinking about?" I said, "Numbers." And she looked at me like, "What do you mean, 2 or 3?" I said, "No, I was just thinking about the way numbers cluster together and they form patterns." "What do you mean pattern?" "Well, it's almost like crystal patterns, like sometimes they fit and sometimes they don't fit. You add another prong and they fit beautifully. And if you look at, base numbers and how many times they can be divided and think in terms of a crystal being formed. I remember in school, one of the experiments we had was a tin pan, like a tin base for a pie tin is what I'm trying to say, and put a little layer of sand in it, sort of shake it until it's all even, and then put an electric magnet under it and drive different audio frequencies into the magnet, and those audio frequencies would cause the pan to vibrate, and the sand would take shapes and forms and like crystal forms and snowflake forms and beautiful patterns just by changing the frequencies of the sound. And
cymatics.
And I got to thinking about those frequencies are numbers, and those patterns are physical evidence of numbers. And so that's where my mind was. And I have a feeling that you've gone there and far beyond that in your thinking of fractals and numbers and that kind of thing. So I'm interested in it.
Yeah, I'll send you the little piece I did on Noah's Ark as well.
Wait, are you aware that I produced a documentary film on Noah's Ark?
No, but
yeah. It had nothing to do. It has nothing to do with the meaning of the word ark, but it's actually
awesome. Same with mine. Well, I mean, I go through some definitions, but do you have an IMDb?
Yes, but I don't know. I guess just by the name, it's the discovery of Noah's Ark.
This is interesting. I definitely want to take a look.
And actually, you can go on our website, realityzone.com, and look it up there. That's our corporate explanation of it. We have a product. It's a DVD.
Nice. Mm-hmm. I mean, it makes sense. The Noah's Ark. I mean, to me, in my project of it brings sense to like having 2 of everything in one coordinate, for lack of a better explanation. I guess it's polarity. You have 2 of everything. Simply put.
Yeah, 2. Yeah, 2 is essential. Everything has an equal and opposite. Cool. Everything. That's the nature of the universe. Interesting on the Noah's Ark, we had a fellow by the name of Sam Windsor on the project during the production, and he was a professional nautical engineer. He designed ships, okay? And so that we have this ark. I'm looking at the big thing on my wall here. It's a huge relic. It's exactly the size of the biblical measurement of Noah's Ark to within a couple of inches, which you have to, give it a little bit of leeway since it's so old, and it came up out of the ground. It's a huge fossil is what it is. But anyway, Sam.
Can you get a picture of it by any chance? Or
Well, go on the website. You see it on the on Reality Zone. You'll see it. Yeah, it's boat shape. Boat shape, and it's anyway. It's huge. But the point is that Sam Windsor looked at it, and he went out there, and they took measurements, and he came back. He says, "You guys are not going to believe this, but Fibonacci sequence is everywhere in this ship. Yeah, everywhere. Now that doesn't happen. Well, it happened in nature, but not as a rock formation."
Wait, that's a rock formation? That's rock, you're saying, up on the wall?
Well, it's now rock. It's a fossil. In other words, it's all been mineralized. It's clear that the structure was built out of reeds, actually, wooden timbers and reeds on the outside. And not at all, it wouldn't have looked at all like the typical artist's conception of Noah's Ark. First of all, it's reeds. It's built of reeds on the surface, not wood planks.
See, what's interesting is the Bible says that that Noah's Ark is built with pitch, with 2 pitches. There's 2 pitches at each end of like a petal, the flower of life. I mean, there's these 2 points, the pitches, that are the coordinates between the arcs, and the arcs are what form these pistil-like, what are the petal-like structures.
Interesting. I didn't know that. Well, you're going to find this interesting because the team that did the work on that did a lot of work on the meaning of pitch and what the ancient texts meant by pitch. And it was pretty clear it was a combination of some oil that was unique to that region, certain mineral composition of oil.
It also has frequency, like the pitch of a sound or a noise.
Oh, could be. I hadn't heard about that. It's quite possible. Anyway, that's off the track. It's interesting to pursue these things. So back to us. So anyway, yeah, thank you for that. Anything you want to send me, I would greatly appreciate it. And think of my position. People are going to ask me the loaded question. Since when have you thrown in with the Luciferians? So now I need to have some answers for that. And and not even talking about the problem we have when we talk about anarchy.
Luciferian anarchists.
Yeah, what could be worse?
I'm blushing. No, yeah. Send them to a Illuciferium. Send them to the State of Anarchy, the channel.
Yeah, and just
let
for
them
the
know
record,
we met you 2 years ago. We interviewed you again this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, just for the record, I've had long conversations with Berwick on this, and we're in basic agreement. Most people don't understand the word anarchy. They, to them, the simple definition is no government. Well, the problem is, that's a pretty clear definition, but the problem is the definition of government. What is government? They have no idea what that is. And once I introduced the concept that the state is a natural formation of human activity, all human groups form into states, whether we call it that or not, call it groups, families, tribes, I don't care what you call it. They're groups, and they form into groups naturally, like all mammals do, for mutual protection, and they always designate certain authorities or certain elements in the group to protect the group. But the question is, how much authority do they have to use coercive force against their members? And the concept of the government is that they have no limit. As long as you get the majority to agree, you can use coercion because the majority agrees. That's sort of democracy, So who wants to live in a government when the definition, what does government, what's the purpose of a government? Is to govern. Who wants to be governed? Nobody raises their hand. So nobody really wants to live under a government. But what do they want the state to do? They want it to protect them. They want to protect their lives, their liberty, and their property. That's all. So if we now stop calling this thing a government, which we don't want, and call it a protectorate, which we do want, now we've created in our minds the space for a different kind of a state that has never existed before, except in little budding beta model when in 1776, when the American Constitution was written. Pretty good beta model, actually, but not perfect by far, as we see. But if the concept is examined and expanded, we realize that the state could be and should be a protectorate. Now, anarchy doesn't, it takes on a different meaning. You can be an anarchist and say, I don't want government. I don't want to be governed by a tyrannical state. But you could say, I wouldn't mind having a benevolent state, which was a protectorate and just limited to those functions of protecting my life, liberty, and property, nothing more. Then we have we've opened up our vision to a whole different reality. So once they, I've talked to a lot of the anarchists out there, and I feel like I'm one of, I am an anarchist in terms of not wanting a government. But I don't go the other way and say that you can live without a state, because we cannot. It will happen. Even out there on the desert island where there's no legislature, if you get 20 people on a desert island, they're going to form and there's going to be a state at the end of a year, or maybe the end of a month. There's going to be a state of some kind. And it's just a question of how do you structure it. So anyway, once we get into that, all the emotion comes out of this word anarchy, and we don't have any trouble at all. Because I think almost everybody agrees on the basic principles of what I just said. Might disagree as to how feasible it is and all that, but still the principles are clear.
Mm-hmm. Less government is better than more government.
Well, zero government is the best if you define.
Best way to get there, though.
Yeah,
zero government overnight would be pretty chaotic and bad,
Well,
however,
yeah.
We can move there. I just think it has to be strategic.
Well, they went from government to a protectorate at the end of the American Revolution overnight. The system they created at the end of the American Revolution was a protectorate. They never called it that, but it had no power to govern the people except to protect their lives, liberty, and property. That was the whole function. And when they talked about that. It was all defensive, negative, not aggressive. Just they formed the 13 colonies into a federation. Why? For their mutual protection, to have an army. And then they went so far as to have a post office. Well, why did they do that? Well, it's for communication. They went too far with that, I thought, because it was convenient, but it had nothing to do with their protection of life, liberty, and property. So there, in the very beginning, they didn't understand the principle I'm talking about clearly enough. And it seems so harmless. A post office. Who cares about a post office? Well, you should care about it, because in principle, the principle embedded in it was the same principle that led to having schools and health care and everything else, laws on who we hire, what we pay, where we live, what we think. All these things come out of the same principle that generated a post office. So now we have a chance to rethink all this, and the next revolution, and I don't mean necessarily one of guns, but certainly a revolution of ideas, will incorporate a true protectorate for the first time in history.
And who are the people going to be running this? Are these going to be elected officials? Because then I think we need, in order for a true protectorate to work, you would need like a blockchain voting system where everything was transparent.
But but we know with AI coming on and everything, blockchains can be broken, and they will as the years come by. That's not going to be any more of a barrier. We still come back to the fact that you need people. You said it. Who is going to protect the protectorate? Who's going to watch the watchers and all that concept? And that's the reason we have Freedom Force International. It has to be a body of people like you and me who care and think about these things. Sit around and think about numbers. Think about these things, beyond just what am I going to do today to have fun. Those people, they have this crusader gene in them, and it'll flash on. And less than, I'm going to say, probably 1/100th of 1% of the population will naturally gravitate into a body like that, and they will be informed enough to be aware of the possibility of infiltrators and evil people who will try and pretend to believe as they do so they can take control of their structure. All of that has to be built into their system, has to be part of the training. We're building a Freedom Academy, which will talk about things like that. How do you protect the protectorate? Who will run it? And how can we make sure that the people involved in running it don't become corrupted themselves?
Yeah, that's the main
Yeah.
main thing. That's why I said we got to ease into it somehow. You can't just shut everything down overnight. Otherwise, the new crooks are going to come in real quick.
Oh, yeah.
know?
That's easy. All they got to do is point at the old crooks and say, look how bad they are.
Yeah, exactly.
No, vote for me because I just said, look how bad they are. And we agree on that, right? So that makes me good.
Yeah,
no, it doesn't. Anyway,
well,
we're off the topic.
Yeah. I mean, maybe we can cut it on a laugh. That's good. Do you mind this conversation, the latter part of our conversation, being public about Illuciferium and stuff like that?
Not at all.
Okay, cool.
Not at all. In fact, I kind of like to, now that you mention it, I probably should have that in my kit. So in case somebody asks me, I'll say, well, look, we talked about it here. You make your own judgment.
Sure.
So that's a good idea. Mm-hmm.
All right.
All right. Send me a copy.
Yeah, I'm going to edit it up tonight.
All right. Good.
Great talking to you.
All right.
See you in a couple weeks.
Okay, Patrick. And thanks
All
for
right.
doing this. All
Peace
right.
out. Later.
Bye.
Join the State of Anarchy this September's Harvest Moon in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where this gathering of like minds aims to foster unbreakable relationships between the movement's leading forces, whom teach self-love and ownership, blockchain techno-economics, as well as exposing the Earth's sacred hidden knowledge. So will we see you there?
If our content resonates with you, then definitely subscribe to the channel and hit the bell button. Otherwise, you will not get notified when we drop dope videos like this. Share it, like it, or even dislike it, but let us know why in the comments below. Hook us up with a crypto tip. Check us out on Patreon. Anarchadelphia is going to be sick. Tickets are already selling. First come, first serve, because we can only sell so many unless we get a bigger venue. You can go to anarchadelphia.com to get your tickets at early bird rate right now. Or you can just go to the State of Anarchy and go through the shop. We got some dope swag. We're also going to be at Anarcho Vegas, July 19th through 21st. And then we'll be at the Red Pill Expo, June 7th through 9th in Hartford, Connecticut.